Ready for another deep dive? This one goes way back to early Islam.
Back to the very beginning.
We're talking about a companion whose name you might not recognize right away, but his story,
It's a powerful one.
Amir Ibn Fuhayra.
And his life, it makes you really think about what we even mean when we say success, you know?
I mean, hardship, he faced it all, yet his impact still felt all these centuries later.
Absolutely.
So we're going to unpack Amir's story. We're basing this deep dive on a really insightful lecture by Dr. Omar Suleiman.
He's got this series focusing on some of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, whose stories don't always get the attention they deserve.
The unsung heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
And Amir's story, it's one you won't forget. I
Yeah.
mean, just imagine, the only white person to accompany the Prophet and Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with them both, on their hijrah.
You're talking about that perilous journey to Medina. Amir was right there with them.
Okay, so let's rewind. Way back, Amir's early life.
Let's just say he wasn't born into privilege. Not at all. Amir was born into slavery, of Abyssinian descent.
Okay.
And here's a twist. He was owned by Tufail ibn Abdullah al-Azdi, who, as it happens, was Abu Bakr's stepson.
Whoa, hold on. So there's already a connection there, even before Islam.
Exactly. And this connection, it plays a huge role later on. But first, we got to talk about Amir's conversion. He's one of the very first to embrace Islam, even before those gatherings at Dur al-Arqam.
Wow. So he's there at the very beginning.
Right at the start.
But wouldn't that mean he faced some of the most intense persecution?
Unfortunately, yes, the sources. They detail some pretty horrific accounts of the torture he endured for his faith. We're talking hot coals, sleep deprivation, beatings. It's tough to even think about.
It's hard to imagine
So-
how anyone could withstand that.
And that's where Amir's story, it becomes so powerful. I mean, this is a testament to his belief, to his faith, despite all that, never wavered. And amidst all of this, you have Abu Bakr. He decides to buy Amir's freedom.
You know what really gets me?
Right.
Amir, even after being freed, he chooses to stay close to Abu Bakr, becomes his shepherd. I mean, you'd think, after everything, he might want a clean break, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But it says a lot about both of them, I think. Abu Bakr's compassion, Amir's loyalty. To choose to stay with the person who had once owned you, that's a deep bond.
A bond that goes beyond just, the circumstances,
Mm.
forged through their shared faith, mutual respect,
Yeah.
and that loyalty. It would become seal during, well, one of the most pivotal moments in Islamic history, right?
A huge area.
The migration of the Prophet and Abu Bakr from Mecca to Medina.
And Amir, he's right there in the thick of it.
Most people know the story of the Prophet and Abu Bakr seeking refuge in the cave of Thar, but not everyone realizes Amir was there with them.
The whole time.
For 3 days, he's their constant companion, their protector.
3 days.
So it wasn't just those three in the cave.
It was 4.
Was that part of the plan?
It was a meticulously coordinated effort. I mean, Asma, may Allah be pleased with her, she brought them food. Abdullah was out scouting for news. And Amir, he put his shepherd skills to work in the most amazing way.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
He brought sheep every day.
There you go.
Not just for, food, but also to cover their tracks, literally.
He was covering their tracks with sheep. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
It's thinking on your feet, right?
Exactly. A reminder that even in those early days, the Muslims, they were resourceful, strategic.
And that strategic thinking continues when it's time for the Prophet and Abu Bakr to leave the cave to continue to Medina. It's Amir who brings the camels.
Their guide, their protector, literally leading them to safety.
It really highlights the level of trust they placed in him. I mean, this wasn't just an errand, right? This was life or death. Remember, they're fleeing persecution.
A bounty on the Prophet's head.
Which brings us to that encounter with Seera ibn Malik. Remember him?
Intent on capturing the Prophet.
Right. Okay. But for those who might not be familiar, what happened with Seera?
So he's chasing after them, right? Driven by that reward. But then, divine intervention, Seera's horse stumbles. Like, repeatedly.
Whoa.
He takes it as a sign, He can't harm the Prophet. And instead, he actually asks for protection.
And where's Amir in all of this?
Well, somebody's going to write down that guarantee of protection, right? The Prophet, peace be upon him, says to write it down. And guess who gets that task?
Amir. I'm seeing a pattern here. He is always there at these key moments.
Witnessing history, participating in it. But this also shows us something else about Amir.
What's that?
He could read and write. A valuable skill at that time, and it allows him to play this crucial role.
And during this whole encounter, it's worth mentioning, the Prophet prophesies to Seera about this future victory, tells him he'll one day wear the bracelets of Kisra, the Persian emperor.
Powerful, isn't it? Even in those moments of danger, uncertainty, the prophet's prophetic knowledge, his divine guidance, always there. But this is just the beginning. They've made it to Medina, but Amir's story.
It's just getting started.
Oh.
Safe in Medina, finally. You'd think Amir, after all that, he'd take a break.
We would, but that just wasn't Amir. Committed through and through.
No sitting on the sidelines for him. We know he fought in the Battle of Badr alongside Abu Bakr.
That's right. Earned him that veteran status, real mark of respect, honor. But his courage tested even further at Uhud.
Uhud. That was rough.
Yeah.
A real test for all of them.
It was, and even with the losses, the hardship, Amir, he was steadfast. This is beyond just, physical bravery. This is faith in action.
It really makes you think, how do we react when things get tough? Do we hold on to our beliefs?
That's the question Amir's story, I think, it asks us. Where is our strength? What are those principles we cling to when everything else is falling apart?
Heavy stuff. Okay, so the story shifts again. Sadly, it takes a tragic turn. A few months after Uhud, the Prophet, peace be upon him, sends a group of Muslims to Najd.
A region, a big potential for spreading the message of Islam, a mission of peace, education.
And Amir, with his knowledge, his ability to teach, he's chosen to go.
Keep in mind, the Muslim community, they're still recovering from Uhud, this mission. It was a beacon of hope, a way to rebuild.
Kind of like what we were just talking about,
Right.
Finding that strength in the face of difficulty.
Exactly. But, and this is the tragic part, the mission, it becomes another blow. Devastating. When they reach Najd, they're betrayed.
Betrayed. By who?
A man named Jabbar ibn Sulma. He attacks them brutally. Amir, along with many others, are killed. Dr. Suleiman describes it as just this profound tragedy, a loss that really shook the community.
It's heartbreaking, especially after everything they had already been through. But there's something about the way Amir died. It's just so powerful.
You're talking about his last words, right?
Fistulillah, as he's being stabbed.
I have succeeded by Allah. I have succeeded by Allah. It gives me chills just thinking about it, to be in that moment, facing death, and still focused on Allah. It's hope. I don't even know how to describe that level of faith. It's beyond bravery, I think. Complete surrender to a higher purpose. Like understanding that true success, it's about Allah's pleasure no matter what.
And what's even more incredible, this is going to sound strange, but Amir's death, it had this profound impact on his killer,
Yeah.
Jabbar ibn Sulma. You're telling me the man who murdered him was affected by it?
He saw it firsthand, Amir's faith, heard those final words, Fustulillah. Something changed in him.
Like Amir's faith, even in death, it became this guiding light.
That's a beautiful way to put it. There are even stories, although not authenticated, about miraculous events. People saying his body was lifted up, taken by angels. But whether you take those literally or not, it speaks to the impact, the power of his life, his death.
So Jabbar, what happened to him? Did he just run?
No, he was overwhelmed. He went to the Muslims, asked about those words. Fustulillah, he wanted to understand.
Wanted to find that source of strength that Amir had, and that led him to Islam.
Exactly. The man who killed Amir, inspired by him, embraced Islam.
Talk about a testament. The impact of a sincere believer. Even in death, Amir was a catalyst for change.
It makes you think, those victories, those truly meaningful ones, sometimes they come through sacrifice, through that unwavering conviction. It brings us back to, how we define success. Here's a man born into slavery, faced unimaginable hardship, but his life and his death, they rippled outward.
Not a household name, maybe, but his story deserves to be remembered. Challenges us to rethink legacy, impact, what it means to live a life of purpose.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder what other stories are out there waiting to be discovered. How many other people, seemingly ordinary, played these extraordinary roles?
Makes you realize history is just full of these hidden gems. The stories that don't always make it into the books.
But they're the ones sometimes that have the most wisdom,
But also to teach us. And it really makes you think about, okay, what kind of impact do I want to have? What do I want to leave behind?
Right. What's my legacy?
Amir shows us you don't have to be powerful or famous to make a difference.
He was a slave, a shepherd. But his actions during the Hijra, that unshakable faith, even his death, all of it contributed to the early Muslims, their survival.
Yeah, he was a witness,
Yeah.
a participant, and in the end, a martyr. But his story, it's also this challenge to us, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It makes us rethink what success even means. Do we stand up for our beliefs, even when it's hard? where do we find our strength?
And sometimes those smallest acts, right,
Yeah.
they can ripple out further than we can imagine.
Just like Amir, his story. It's about the power of belief, you know? No matter what he faced, that conviction, it never left him. He teaches us true success, it's about pleasing Allah, no matter what.
Is powerful. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I feel this sense of awe. Amir Ibn Fuhayra, his name may not be as familiar as some others, but his impact.
No less important.
It's a story that stays with you. Makes you think. Makes you ask those tough questions.
Hopefully it inspires us to live with a little more courage, a little more faith, and a lot more reliance on Allah.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So to our listeners, we'll leave you with this. What legacy do you want to leave behind? What impact do you want to make on the world?
Because, as Amir's story shows, even those smallest acts of courage, of faith, they can have a ripple effect that, honestly, none of us can even imagine.
Think about it. And until next time, keep diving deep.